Okay, so I'm here with Nancy. We're going to talk about the difference between demoralization and burnout. Nancy is a first year teacher, but had been a paraeducator for 18 years prior to that. So she has a pretty good understanding of what teacher burnout looks like, but I don't know, Nancy, if you know much about demoralization or that term. Is that something that's familiar to you or something that you've heard about?
No.
Okay. So when we think about burnout, we think about things like the second grade teacher that you replaced, who just couldn't seem to manage her emotions. Everything seemed to drive her crazy. She really just was very anxious and never felt like she could get anything done, and she blamed herself. Demoralization really focuses more on losing those moral rewards of teaching. So, all of the things, all the systemic kinds of institutional things that make teaching less of what you think it's going to be and more just kind of a mandated bunch of
So, like
nonsense.
the standardized testing that's required
Right. So,
rather than
yeah.
teaching.
Right. So, let's talk a little bit about that. What kinds of things have you found demoralizing this year as you've begun your career as a teacher?
Well, I thought that teaching would be more teaching. At the beginning of the year, with second grade especially, we have a lot of uh, independent tests that we have to get done so we have a baseline of what the children know and what they don't know, which is great data, but at the same time, there's not a lot of teaching going on.
That can be frustrating, or especially as you're starting your career and you want to get to the meat of teaching, and it seems like all you're doing is actually testing kids.
Yes.
One of the other features of burnout really focuses on the individual as the failure, and the teacher needing more grit or resilience. And it really doesn't allow those extra personal factors like district mandates, students in poverty, English learning status, things like that. It doesn't really account for that. It really just blames a teacher. Do you feel like in since you've become a teacher, are you more aware of how teachers are pretty much blamed for everything in society, or did you already have a pretty good handle on that?
Uh, as a paraeducator, I did see that, but actually being a teacher now, it's more apparent, um, especially with our school population. We have a lot of children that are not from the United States who speak Spanish, and teaching, it's harder, not impossible, but harder to teach children that don't speak English because you're teaching children on so many different levels in one classroom. When you have a classroom full of 31 children, you have some children that are on grade level, but most of my children are well below grade level because of the language barrier.
So, do you see that as being a potential factor in your burnout or potential burnout as a teacher?
I don't. I see it more of a challenge because I feel when I see growth with my ESOL population, it shows that I am actually teaching them and they are learning. Most of my children are getting to the point now, after only a month of school, that they can communicate basic needs. Uh, More has to go into your teaching style than just teaching curriculum. You have to have pictures for things so that they can understand. We use a lot of hand gestures. So there's things that other teachers who don't teach in this population might not realize goes into teaching when you're teaching this type of population of children.
So, we're about 6 weeks into school. How are you feeling emotionally about your process in becoming a teacher and how your year's begun? And be honest.
Well, initially I thought I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life. As it's gone on, I've developed very close relationships with my children, and I'm starting to see the rewards of the hard work I've already put in. Not gonna lie, each day is a different challenge. Um, I knew I was going to have to teach whatever curriculum they told me to teach, which is not the sole problem. The problem is there's not extra time to do fun things with the children. It's really driven by a scripted curriculum, and in order to get everything in that we're told that we have to teach, they're it's like the children are little robots and they can't have fun learning.
And are you having fun teaching?
Depends on what it is that day. um, I am having fun teaching because the children love coming to school. I'm told on a daily basis they love to come to school.
That must be pretty rewarding.
It is. And certain children just need a little bit of extra attention. So not only are you teaching the curriculum, you're also trying to incorporate social emotional learning with the children. And it's sometimes a challenge to pull a little bit away from the curriculum because of the time. But you have to make that time to make those connections so that they want to learn.
What would you say to the teacher that says, I can't be creative in the classroom because of the scripted curriculum?
You can. There's things within the curriculum that you can tweak a little bit to suit the needs of your students. Um, can I give you an example?
Please.
We're reading our module right now that we're doing is about change. So the children are learning how the seasons change and different colors associated with the seasons. And then the last book of this module is about a chameleon, with how a chameleon changes his colors. And one of the things that we'll be doing as a class is using tissue paper to make different colored chameleons, so that we're being creative but still sticking to the curriculum with what they're learning. But this is giving me a better idea so I can see that they're actually learning.
Some would argue that when a teacher says, I can't be creative in the classroom, what they're really saying is they can't be responsive to their students' needs, and they can't infuse the students' interest into their teaching. But it sounds like you're figuring out slowly but surely ways that you're able to do that. When talking to your teammates or teachers from other grade levels, do you think that they would agree with that statement, that really the not being creative in the classroom is really more a concern about not being able to be responsive to the needs of their learners?
I think some of the teachers, because of evaluations, so much is placed on the evaluations that they feel they have to stick to the curriculum as it's written, and you do, but trying to change different parts of the lesson that you're doing to be able to keep their attention and keep them interested and make them want to learn more about what it is that we're doing. Uh, they're they're kind of having fun with the unit that we're doing now with the season of we're studying autumn and the different colors, and they're learning words that I didn't even know they knew. For instance, scarlet. One of my kids today knew that meant red.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's shift a little bit to talk about self-care. Self-care is a big buzzword in education, and you and I sat in a staff meeting today that was particularly focused on self-care. What's your sense of the movement towards more self-care in education? Specifically, we have a partnership with the Positive School Center. So today we had a presentation, just again giving us different ways of celebrating and other activities. So how do you see self-care as a part of your teaching?
It's important to take care of yourself. You're no good to others if you're not taking care of yourself, and that's hard to understand, especially, or to put into practice, I should say, especially if you're a first year teacher, because you're learning so many new things. This is the first time teaching the curriculums. This is the first time that you're entering grades, the first time you're doing a lot of things. So it's hard right now to take time for myself just because of the time that I need to spend on other things to prepare so that I can be that teacher tomorrow that my students need me to be.
So some argue that putting this focus on self-care that we're placing on teachers and educators is actually a passive way to address the larger problem in schools today. What would you say about that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I agree to a point. I think that there's things that could be changed district wide to take some of the stress off of teachers rather than adding stress, it seems, every opportunity they have. One of the things is, you know, providing more paraeducators within a building so that teachers can actually do some of the things that they have to do and have the support within the classroom so that the kids aren't learning, they're not losing time from learning because the teacher has to go and independently test so many kids for the baseline test that we do, and then we have it again in the middle of the year and again at the end of the year. Students are missing a lot of teaching time, a lot of time that they could be learning something rather than just testing. So we're given busy work to try to get everything done that we need to get done instead of getting the support from whether it be the administration or from the district. It seems they just keep adding to our plates because we're teachers and we do what we have to do.
Right.
So
Now, that's kind of the teacher way. It's, every year we do more and more with less and less, and somehow we always make it work. Wow, what would you say about the thought that teachers that raise their concerns, like push back on the scripted curriculum, or the choice of curriculum as being inappropriate for your English learners, things like that, what would you say to those who would call those teachers self-interested, or the teachers who are sticklers to their union contract? What do you think about that? Do you think those teachers are self-interested, or do you think it's something greater than that?
I think it's for their own personal gain. Myself personally, I feel I'm going to do what I need to do for my students. And if that means, I have to give up a planning period instead of, you know, I just feel, yes, we need that time. But if we have to teach so that the children understand what's being taught, I'm open to give up my time. I'm
Yeah, I
willing to
know that
stay after school. I'll do what I have to do.
recently you took your entire class during your lunch period just to have a different, kind of as a reward, but also to get a different read on them and how they are in a more social situation. What did you learn from that?
Well, that whole plan backfired. It was only supposed to be about 10 kids of the 31 that I have. And when I went into the cafeteria to try to get the children that I was going to choose to eat lunch with me, which were going to be the ones that were more of the behavioral problems, just so they can also see me in a different light other than being in front of them teaching all day. Um, as I was calling children, other kids were just getting up, and then I felt bad because I saw some of them with a sad face when I wasn't choosing them. So I just took the whole class, and they seemed to really enjoy it. They loved coming in there. They spent the whole half hour with me. We ate lunch, we talked, they watched a cartoon, um, and it's to the point now that this is something that we're going to try to do every Friday, and all the kids are very excited.
Well, that sounds really cool. So just cycling back around to that demoralization versus burnout. Um, On a scale of 1 to 10, how burnt out do you feel right now at this point in the school year and in your career?
Scale of 1 to 10 right now, I'd say I'm probably at a 5.
Okay. What's some of the reasons for your rating of a 5?
Uh, just the time that it takes to put into the planning, the time it takes to, just make copies of things for the kids to do, trying to come up with creative ideas to make the lesson a little bit more fun, researching things on the internet. I'm part of a group on social media for Wit and Wisdom curriculum, and I see some of the videos that they post to give me some ideas of what I could do to incorporate things in my lessons to make it more of an active learning situation and give them uh, more just more say in things that takes place and not just bark orders at them all day. Give them a sense of ownership. Um, Initially, I felt like I couldn't do this. The first 2 weeks, if you would have asked me this question, I was at a 10.
Right.
Um, just because I had no clue what I was getting into. But I love teaching. I love actual teaching. I don't like
It's all
the
the
other
other
stuff
things.
that comes along with it.
And same scale 1 to 10, how demoralized do you feel as an educator? And take into account your 18 years as a paraeducator as well as this year as a teacher.
I'd say probably an 8. I feel that there's not a lot of support from administration, from the school system. Uh, I do feel supported by certain teachers in our building who have known me for the 18 years. I have a lot of people that have, offered help. The only problem with that is I still don't know what I really need help with.
Right.
So that's part of the problem. But I feel like the whole system is set up for failure. When you first become a teacher, you don't know the ins and outs of just the computer systems that are used, the computer programs that are used.
We've talked about this before. You've been in the system for 18 years. You knew about all these things, but just some of the ins and outs that people thought you knew.
Right. Something as simple as entering attendance.
Right.
I had no clue of how to do. The very first day of school, I got an email from one of our administrators uh, that it was a little harshly put that my attendance wasn't in yet. However, I had already put the attendance in before I saw the email. But the problem with that is we're told don't get on your phones, don't do this, don't do that during the school day, but yet that's how most of the communication is given throughout the day. So
Right. So
there's a lot of miscommunication.
Right. So basically, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So given your current level of burnout and demoralization, do you think you'll still be teaching in 5 years? What
I
about
do.
10?
10, I could probably retire, so no.
All
But
right.
5 years, definitely.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for participating in our conversation today on teacher burnout versus demoralization.
No problem.